Hi, everyone. Welcome to this discussion today about mindfulness and tapping into your full potential. My name is Adelina, and I'm a project manager at Stichting Job On. This meeting today is organized as part of the Job On Summer Tour, the main goal of which is actually to take time for yourself and to focus on yourself and on the self reflection. And to do this, we have invited an incredible guest today, Claudia van Zouden, who is going to tell us more about it. Claudia is a leadership trainer, mindfulness teacher, author, public speaker, and actually many other things. So probably she can tell us more about it later as well. But what I actually like about Claudia is that she has this practical and solution-based approach to the topic. So thank you so much for joining today. And
Oh, so nice.
and I actually want to start. By the way, if you have any questions throughout our discussion, you can always write them in the comments. But I have the first question. The topic of our
Mm.
discussion today is from profit to potential. So, can you please tell us what you actually mean by this? Like, I know there is some deeper idea behind it. So, could you please tell us more?
Yeah, well, very good morning, Adelina, and thank you for inviting me and for this lovely introduction, and also to everyone who is watching or maybe watching later. Thank you very much for joining. Yes, it is quite a thing. This moving from profit to potential, especially when we look at an corporate world, especially when we go on live on LinkedIn as such, because it seems like the world is very much focusing on profit and on wealth. But it's not the sole focus, this profit. There is also the potential which is we have inside of all of us. And why is that so important? Well, I think it gives fulfillment and it gives growth in our life. We don't focus only on financial gains, but also on personal development, on fulfillment, and really on the individual as rather than the organization. And what happens? We then strengthen our passions. We strengthen our fire within, our something that we want to wake up in the morning for, and it will give us success on a more holistic level than just on the profit level. And therefore, I think it's very important because when we focus only on wealth or we focus only on profit, then it's often not so sustainable. It's very short-term thinking. But if we look more at the long-term thinking, if we make sure that we also unlock our potential within, not only ourselves will benefit, but also the organization that we are involved with. So that's
Exactly.
it, basically in a nutshell. It also makes us more adaptable, more resilient. It makes us choose our own personalized and authentic path, and it improves our emotional well-being, which I think is very important nowadays when we see all the burnout uh, symptoms happening with people. So that's why I think if we just move away from only looking at the profit, but we also start looking at unlocking our potential, we're moving in a different direction, more
Exactly.
beneficial.
Yes, I think many of us can relate to this, and I
Mhm.
see more and more people who actually start wondering about these
Yeah,
questions, like what I actually want to do, what I love to do, not
that's
just
it.
about money, but also what actually calls me. So then I have a question: how I can, what if I want to do this, and I now realize this need? How can I actually do this? How can I move in that direction of potential fulfillment and soul call?
It starts first with yourself. So it's becoming more self aware, becoming more self reflective. So certain things like mindfulness practices, becoming aware of how you think, what thoughts do I have all the time. Because if, for example, you're heading toward burnout, then you have certain thoughts in your head, probably that you can't keep up with the work and things like that. So they start to manifest in your body. There is a certain stress level that's building up. You probably get all the symptoms like can't sleep very well, maybe palpitations, you don't feel you fully relaxed at times. So these are already signs that something is not going in the right direction.
Mhm.
So how can we move then to our potential is that we become more reflective and say, hey, what's really going on inside me? Is there something in me that's not so happy about something? Because our body will give the signals to our head. But what we do in this day of age, we really focus on the outside world. And there is a lot of focus on that. But when we actually go into in our inner world, and I think that's what meditation is, to becoming more familiar with where we're at, how we think, how we feel, those kind of things, we become more aware of our inner world. And when we become more of our inner world, we can start to listen to the signs that our body gives. Because if we are fully in the rat race of life nowadays, we really work with our brain. That is our old brain, sometimes even our reptile brain, and then our mammal brain, our limbic system. And that is about emotions, behavior, fight or flight mode. So we work a lot with that system when we're under stress. But when we become more relaxed, when we become more mindful, then we start to work more with the prefrontal cortex of our brain. And that is the part of our brain where we can make compassionate decisions. We can think differently. We're not so emotional, so we can make more wiser decisions. But what we see, because we're in this life of constant rush on the phone, emails that we need to reply to at 2 a.m. in the morning, because our boss expects us to have an answer before 8 a.m., we start to work more with our limbic system. So we're actually going back in evolution. Right? This is for the first time scientists are saying this is happening. And this is why, because we are under such constant stress, we're developing, especially with younger people, we see the limbic system is actually growing and the prefrontal cortex is shrinking.
Wow.
Yes.
I didn't know that. Wow.
So, how interesting. So when we become more aware of what we really want, what's really good for us, not only us will benefit because we'll be more relaxed, we make more conscious decisions. And then we start to work with the prefrontal cortex. We are also bringing something different into organization that we're working, for example, or in our team, because we are more conscious, more aware. So we're not so reactive. It's not like firefighting all the time. We're looking at the long-term benefit. So this invites creativity, innovation, like I said, emotional well-being, sustainable performance, sense of belonging. All these things are really the benefits of moving for unlocking your potential, right? And how do we do that? Well, like I said, with mindfulness, you become more self-aware of what you do and surround yourself with people who are inspiring you. Take some time out, go and do some volunteering. Check out what makes my heart warm inside, because this is what shows if we develop like say more empathy or more compassion within ourselves, to ourselves and towards others. This has a great benefit on our well-being. This is what science is showing us with people who suffer from depression. They say, they advise them to do some volunteering, if they're in a certain phase of their depression, when they could again, for example, in their phase of recovery. They say, go and volunteer in your local community or whatever, because it does something with us. By nature, we are compassionate beings. But through how we are brought up, because we're only focusing on the wealth, which is in the financial gain, not only on the personal development gain, we are making the compassion within ourselves, we're making it smaller. The ability, we can develop compassion. So we don't learn that from a young age anymore. So what do? We really start to focus on the short-term thinking. Like I said, we work more with the limbic system, not with the prefrontal cortex. So it's becoming aware, like, I'm going in a behavior that's subconscious. How can I change this into a more aware, concise choice and what I can do in my life? So I could start volunteering, because then I realize, wow, if I give something to you, then I get something back, and we see this already in many old traditions. I think even Francis of Assisi has said it. He was a Christian monk who just was so selfless. And I'm not a Christian, but I love what his work was in that way. And he was like, it's by giving we receive. And that is something we've forgotten. It was all about gaining things for ourselves or for the organization. But when we actually start to find out what gives us true joy, it's often by being of service. And this is why we see at the moment why so many NGOs are happening to help people, or startups that have a purpose. People from your age really want to work for organizations that have a purpose, like what you're doing now. You want to help people.
I agree. Yes, exactly.
That's so new, so new. And I think that is one of the reasons why, that we want to have a meaningful life. We want to relate to people again. We want to step out of the phone. You see now in organizations that they say no more time on the phone in for a few hours. Start to talk to your colleague. Find out about that person. How can I help you? How can I help you to grow with your project? What can I do for you? What can I do for you? It is a different atmosphere. So the culture is starting to change in organizations. So I think, this is quite a big topic. I go from 4 Ps, so from profit to passion to purpose to potential, and those are steps. So
okay.
So I feel that also like embracing your failures, learning from your mistakes. That's again that self-compassion, but that also helps to to unlock that potential, because we all learn from our mistakes. I wouldn't even call them mistakes. They're learning experiences. Step out of your comfort zone once, because that's what we do. We feel safe, and especially when we're under stress. But can you actually have a bit of a parachute mind? Like, can you go when you talk to people? Can you stay more open, saying, well, actually, can I put my opinion on the side for a moment, and can I learn something from this person or from this topic, or be more open, instead of that grasping, like I know it all, or I've learned this at university, or I read an article about this. Can you come off a stance of, I don't know? And then also, how often is it not that I had in my life an idea about something, and 10 years later, I was like, how did I think like that before? It's not like that anymore. So our mind is constantly evolving. So there's like personal growth that we get. And when we have that, personal growth, we can reflect and we can adjust and say, okay, well, that's what like that. But because of these findings or these experiences, I've changed in this. I can adjust to that. So what do I need to do differently? So I remember once was about 10 years ago, I nearly choked. I was alone in my home, and I nearly choked. And a bit of food got stuck in my throat. And I was like, that's it. I could not breathe anymore. And I was alone, and I lived in Scotland on top of a hill. And I thought, well, that's it. So I thought, what do I need to do? Shall I write a note or something that I choked and I love you all, or whatever? But the only thing that kept running through my mind was, did I love enough?
Wow.
Did I love enough? And ever since that, I then put my back against the wall and I started to bash against, and I unlocked that bit of food so I could breathe again, and came over that shock. And I'm lucky to be here still. But that has been something. Can you love enough? And that doesn't mean that you don't have boundaries, or that you can, feel like you have to give all yourself all the time. No, you can also say, well, can I love myself enough here? Can I love myself enough to say, you know what? Actually, this feels that I'm stretching myself too much here, or I'm going too far out of my comfort zone here, or I'm working too long hours here, even though I love my job. But can I also love myself a little bit enough and say, enough is enough, and now I'm going to take some rest, and tomorrow I'll pick up the pieces again. So there's also that part. But once we do that, when we come into that understanding of self-compassion, compassion for others, continuous learning, being creative, things start to evolve in a different way, and we might discover things in ourselves that we never thought were possible. So,
Well, this story about you just told gives me goosebumps. Wow, what a story!
oh,
And, yeah, and about you also mentioned this is really nice, like really nice tools you give. I also wanted to ask you. You mentioned about self-reflection, and mindfulness. So, is there any way I can practice that also in my daily life?
yeah, sure. A good, lovely question, and it's about becoming aware of where we're at. Like I said, become familiar with our thoughts. So what I like to do in the morning, we like to meditate before we start working. That's just some of our practice. But what everyone can do is just take a few mindful breaths. Start with that during the day. Like for example, if you go into a meeting, then already take 3 deep, long breaths if you're sitting safely in a safe environment and so forth. So make sure that's all in place. And then just watch your breath for 3 deep breaths. And then already notice what it does to you. Well, and if that starts to give some more calm, maybe. And because also what happens, for example, if you have a meeting or you need to make a decision, take 3 deep breaths first. It's that time between the stimulus and the response, because otherwise you have stimulus and reaction. But if you apply, for example, a moment of mindfulness in the middle, say for about 3 breaths, just become here in the now, more present, and then you get a response. You are more likely to feel different, make a maybe more conscious decision, and have a different outcome. So that is one way of starting. And otherwise, you can just sit 2-3 minutes somewhere in a chair. You don't have to sit on a meditation cushion or on a yoga mat or something, but just like that, sit on a chair. Make sure you're comfortable if you can sit up straight. If you can't, then lie down. And just make sure you take a few breaths and just watch your breath. Just watch it coming in and going out. And if you find that you get distracted, then train your mind like a puppy. If you're training a puppy, you're not going to shout to the puppy and say, well, why do you run away when I call you and this and that? You just give it a little cookie and you say, be kind. And that's the same with your mind, because your mind is so busy. So when you're watching your breath, it will want to wander off. And then just bring it back. Say, I'm thinking again, and bring it back, watching the breath, breathing in, breathing out, breathing in, breathing. And that's all you do. And then you can, if you want, you can check your body. Is there any tension? And just become familiar. Oh gosh, when I'm sitting like this, I actually feel a tension in my shoulder. Okay, you don't have to change anything, but you will find that in time, your body will start to relax more. And this, of course, has an effect on your heart rate, on your well-being, on your mind, on the immune system. The science is all showing this already. And you can even take that further. There's lovely programs you can learn about mindfulness techniques. But this is like the basic start that can help. Yeah.
No, I know. I think many of us heard about it, but that it's powerful breath and all of that. But how many of us actually? I forget to practice every day, for example, and it's actually practicing it and coming back to your body to this moment. Indeed.
Yeah. It's being in the now, and because we are so much in the future or so much in the past, and that's also one thing that you can become familiar with your thoughts. What am I thinking? Wow, I'm actually thinking about the future a lot here. That means I'm worrying, which creates a lot of cortisol in the body and adrenaline, and it can all happen like that. But when we actually start to just watch, be the observer, so don't unpack your thoughts, be the observer, the witness of what's going on in your story. Yeah, you can sit with your eyes closed, you can rest your hands on your lap, and just say, wow, there's a lot of thoughts going on here. And that's fine. But just by even watching the breath, your body will start to calm down. And you become maybe then aware that you are not your thoughts, because we think you're not your thoughts. Mm-hmm. You're thinking your thoughts. Well, because who's watching your thoughts? I call that is your higher self or your consciousness. So we have this whole film going in front of here all day long with all these thoughts. But can you actually sit in the seat with the bag of popcorn and say, wow, and I'm thinking this and I'm thinking that, It's like, because you're not your thoughts. So you don't have to identify with your thoughts as much. And that means you also don't have to always believe your thoughts.
Exactly.
And doesn't mean you always have to act upon them that way. You can say, wow, is this really true?
Yeah, exactly.
That's called self-reflection, So have a parachute mind.
Yes, parachute. It sounds amazing. I also was wondering, you talk a lot about this concept, spiritual intelligence, and I think what you just told has to do with it, right? So we all know, of course, about IQ. Then we know about emotional intelligence, how important it is in our daily life at the workplace. But we don't talk much about spiritual intelligence. So can you tell us more about this as well?
Yeah, thank you. That is a question to my heart. I believe that yes, we need the intellect intelligence, to make rational decisions, drive a car, learn new things. Although in time, even that can become a subconscious habit. But then we have the emotional intelligence, and emotional intelligence, I think, is something we've also neglected very much in the world over the last, say, 50, 60 years. And I'm very hot on that, especially with children. As you know, we spoke about that, because I believe if we were all taught from a very young age how to deal with emotions in a helpful way, that could have helped us a lot in later life. That saved a lot of trouble and heartache and things like that. So emotional intelligence is also something that we need to learn, how to deal with our emotions, how to acknowledge our emotions, how to heal our emotions, and so forth. So that's important. And then we have the spiritual aspect, and that doesn't have to be religious. It can be something that is maybe another part of ourselves that I always say, when we're really in trouble in our lives and we really have heartache, it always seems that we then want to make a connection with something that's bigger than ourselves. And it's that part, but that lives within us, that part. So how can we awaken that and nurture that too? And I think when we do those three, and some add four, they also say the physical intelligence, because our body also gives us these signals that we often ignore. When we have those all in balance, then I think we can experience wholeness within. And that means that we don't have to look in the outside world so much to find meaning in life or inner happiness. That the inner happiness for me is inside. No one in life will make you happy. No one. What someone doesn't make you happy. It's how you react, how you respond, how you deal with things, with your thoughts and so forth. But no one in life, I have a beautiful partner, but he won't make me happy. He adds to my happiness for sure. But the only thing, or the only one that makes life happy is yourself.
And you mentioned it's also important to practice the spiritual intelligence also at the workplace, right? So it's becoming more and more important in the career as well.
That I think goes more to the purpose, I think when you as a person feel whole in yourself, and I think every organization should encourage this, that because that will bring so much extra to the organization. If you can imagine, if everybody would unlock their full potential, what this could bring to an organization with innovation, creativity, productivity, and so forth, focus, incredible. So yeah, there is that part. I think we need to look more at how to become more whole, and then spiritual intelligence is a great key factor in that, and mindfulness is a part of that, because it's becoming familiar then with who you really are. Because then after a while you might go further and say, but who am I really? Who is this Adelina? Really, and I would always advise to find a nice teacher with this. Don't do this on your own as well. People have been very much isolated in the culture nowadays. So how can we actually start to connect more with each other, build communities more, with each other, whether that is at a team. How wonderful is it if you have lovely connections with your teammates? And how it's possible, how can you do that and more and integrate that more, and then see each other as a maybe more as a colleague who works very hard, but have a more interest. Who are you really? What can I do to help you? How can I make your life more meaningful today? As well, and that gives more meaning to our own lives as well. It's a different approach, I think, a more holistic approach.
Yeah, that actually, yes, I agree. I totally agree. And you also mentioned that it's a holistic approach, and that how amazing would be if we all would be happy at the workplace and have a purpose. And how can we actually, maybe it's a little bit a utopian question, but how can we ensure that we as a society move towards this potential-based career and yes, on the more societal level?
I think when we do this, it gives us more opportunities and potential to make an impact in the world.
Exactly.
As organizations. When we ignite our passions, our aspirations, this is going to contribute to the greater good. And I think as the situation we're looking at the world like now, whether that is for the environment, for sustainability, meaningful causes, social initiatives, all these things, this is how we then move towards thinking that way rather than just for the profit for the organization. Because we see, like I said earlier, more like younger generations, but also generations like myself, who are a bit older, wanting to work with organizations that have a meaning, that contribute something to the world. Then we go to work and think, yeah, I've made a difference today. I've helped to make this planet a more beautiful planet. And I can tell you hundreds of things that I'm doing right now that make me get up in the morning and say, yes. And this is globally. I work with people in South Africa. I'm an advisor coach for homeless entrepreneurs, a great organization in Barcelona that work globally with wonderful people who are homeless and still have an ambition, aspiration. And I am the advisory coach for all the coaches and their team there. But when I do that, I love it. It just gives me just such great feeling of being alive. And it gives you energy instead of feeling drained. But like I said, know you to set your boundaries, saying, I work like this. I've learned over my life as well. I've been a serial entrepreneur since I was 21.
Wow.
I've had many businesses and very successful and loved it. And now still I only do what gives me meaning in life. And you know what? If you do that, well, I believe the universe will look after you. You will always be taken care of. So that's my personal belief.
Exactly. I totally agree. And you also mentioned about children, like starting with from a young age as well. And I know that you wrote a book as well about this.
I wrote a book, yeah.
I find it important to actually teach children this concept that you just mentioned, to start from a very young age. So
yeah, I wrote a book here. It's called Nora the Polar Bear and Marcin the Polar Bear Whisperer. And it's a story about hope, friendship, and taking solutions for taking care of the earth. And it's a solution-focused book where there's also reflection and self-inquiry for children. And they can look at what they learned from Nora and Marcin, because I like to look at your strengths and your potential and how you can develop that inner quality that you already have more. And I think when we learn to do that from a young age, we will all face challenges in life. But how you go about with the challenges, that makes your character. That makes you divine your choices in life wisely. So I thought if I can start young, and then some teachers approached me and said, can you write a book about that? And then I started to work with some classes in schools, and the kids they fell in love with Nora, the polar bear, but they really got something out of the book. And so I think I needed to do that as a mother and a grandmother myself. I needed to leave something like that for the future generations. So that's why I did that.
That's amazing. Honestly, I really think we miss this kind of literature, mindful, like you wrote, because when I see, for example, modern cartoons for children, I don't know, I get a panic attack just looking at it, like how it's also colorful and crazy. So I think it's important to create this.
Yeah.
it starts from young generations. I'm about to finish right now because it's already 30
Yeah.
minutes. And I wanted to ask you, do you want to give like some advice maybe for listeners? Anything else you want to share?
Yeah, I think what would be wonderful is slow down. We always say slow down to speed up. So practice those 3 breaths maybe twice a day. Put an alarm on your phone that you just have a little reminder, 3 breaths. And then ask yourself more the question, what would love do?
Mhm.
What would love do?
Wow, this is a good question to ask indeed. Okay,
And thank you so much, Adelina, for inviting me and for the beautiful work you're doing and
thank you.
inspiring people to follow their heart. Yeah, and we always say maybe we can do this as well, Adelina. Can you point to yourself, please?
To myself, like this?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay, that's interesting. Yeah. Well, this is really lovely because when people point to themselves, they often point like this,
Yeah.
and they point to their heart.
Ah, yeah,
They
okay.
don't point here, right? Or
Mhm,
here. So ask your heart, what do you want? And make that combination because
mhm,
we need a rational mind, but we forget often the heart. And when I ignored my heart with certain decisions I made in my life, I actually felt sick and I could listen. And my body would say, you need to listen here because you're making a wrong choice here. So even check up if you need to make a decision or you have to go in a meeting, or even if you're a leader of a big company or a CEO or whatever, you need to make choices. Check your values, check your principles, your ethics, because your heart tell you if you make the right decision or not. And if you make the hard decision, yeah, your heart always beats right. We always say it klopt. It's fine.
mhm,
It knows what it does, and it
mhm,
gives you 1 or 2 words. But don't ignore the heart.
mhm, mhm.
Listen to it. So maybe that is helpful.
Absolutely. Thank you for this beautiful reminder, for this inspiration, for everything. Thank you so much.
Thank
I,
you, Adelina, and thank you everyone for watching.
thank you for watching. Yes, and have a lovely day. Bye
And
bye.
you too, and have a lovely life. Bye bye.